Have you ever felt that moment when the air in a room changes so subtly that no one else seems to notice, but you do? A joke with your name in it, a smile that lingers a little too long, a tone that sounds polite but tastes like poison. You tell yourself it's nothing. You swallow it, hoping silence will make it fade. But it doesn't. It grows, louder, sharper, more public. Until one day you realize the moment you ignored wasn't harmless, it was a test. Because disrespect rarely begins with a slap. It begins with a whisper, a small fracture in how others perceive your worth. And when you let it slide, you've already answered the question they were too afraid to ask. Can I get away with this? In a world obsessed with appearances and power, respect isn't something you wait to receive, it's something you establish. How you respond in that instant defines not just what they think of you, but how the world learns to treat you. So the next time someone crosses that invisible line, remember, your silence can either protect your peace or surrender your power. Which will it be? Here's where your real strength begins. It happens in that quiet, piercing second right after someone crosses the line. Their words are casual, even charming, but something inside you tightens. You feel the sting behind the smile. It's not about the words, it's about what they were testing. They want to see your reaction, to measure your control, to know if they can reach you. Most people fail this test. They laugh it off, try to act unbothered, or rush to defend themselves. But every reaction feeds the disrespect. Every word becomes permission. The truth is simple. When someone disrespects you, your power is in what you don't do. Now imagine this moment unfolding. The room has gone still. You could speak, you could correct them, but you don't. You go silent. Not passive, but deliberate. It's a silence with weight. You pull your energy inward like a wave drawing back before the storm. That withdrawal, that pause, is your first act of control. Because the one who reacts emotionally loses standing, but the one who withdraws strategically becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability commands fear. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Your silence is that realization in motion. It's not weakness, it's refusal to hand over your peace. You're not ignoring what happened. You're taking its power away by refusing to feed it. Every look, every breath, every second of quiet makes the offender question what they've just awakened. That's the shift. When you say nothing, they start talking to fill the void, to undo what they can't control. Think of it this way. Disrespect feeds on response the way fire feeds on oxygen. When you stop reacting, the flame dies on its own. You don't need to fight it. You simply stop giving it air. You don't laugh to appear easygoing. You don't explain why it bothered you. You let the weight of your silence press against their ego until it cracks. That silence is not submission, it's precision. Seneca said that anger, once indulged, becomes our master, so you must master it first. Silence is the battlefield where you practice that mastery. It's where you remind yourself that you are not a puppet pulled by emotion, but the hand that holds the strings. Your calm is not coldness, it's intelligence. You're choosing when and how to spend your energy. Every calm pause is a signal that you are not available for chaos. Now, picture the dynamic shifting. The person who disrespected you begins to fidget. Their voice falters. The air around them thickens. They wanted to dominate the conversation, to make you the center of their control, but your stillness turned their stage into a mirror. And suddenly, it's their reflection everyone is watching, not yours. You've changed the rhythm. You've broken their pattern. What was meant to humiliate now exposes them instead. Epictetus taught that we can't always choose what happens, but we can always choose how to meet it. Your silence is that choice made visible. It's the Stoic sword, sharp, clean, invisible. You don't swing it wildly. You let it rest in your hand until the moment demands precision, and when that moment comes, your stillness cuts deeper than anger ever could. This is the first Machiavellian law of handling disrespect. Do not react emotionally. Withdraw strategically, because the person who loses their calm loses control of the narrative. But the person who controls the pause, the silence between stimulus and response, controls the room. You've just shifted from being their target to being their mirror. And nothing unnerves the arrogant more than seeing their reflection in still water. Machiavelli never struck first. He watched. He studied. He let his enemies reveal themselves fully before he made a move. That is wisdom disguised as patience, and when he finally acted, it was not with apology, it was with precision. That's your next move too. So the next time disrespect finds its way toward you, don't rush to correct it. Don't explain. Don't return the fire. Instead, go silent. Withdraw your energy. Let them feel what it's like to lose your attention, your warmth, your engagement. Let them drown in the quiet you've created. Because silence, when deliberate, is not absence, it's authority. And in that space between what they said and what you refuse to give, you've already won. This is where the lesson begins, not in the noise, but in the calm that follows it. Now imagine this moment. The air between you and them feels sharp. Someone has just crossed the line, not with a scream, but with a smile, the kind that hides venom behind charm. Everyone laughs, waiting to see what you'll do. But instead of anger, you give them something far more dangerous: composure. This is where the art begins, not in reaction, but in reflection. You don't insult back. You don't raise your voice. You mirror the violation, calmly, surgically. You look them in the eye, steady and unflinching, and say, "Did you mean to say it that way? Or perhaps, you sure you want to repeat that? Maybe that sounded personal. Want to clarify before I respond?" Each word is a blade of ice, controlled, deliberate, leaving no room for chaos. You're not denying what happened. You're handing it back to them, clean and magnified, forcing them to see what they've done without you ever breaking a sweat. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. This is that power in motion. You're not reacting to the world, you're governing it. Because when someone disrespects you, they expect an emotional explosion. They want to expose your weakness. What they never expect is exposure of their own. So, you hold the silence. You let it hang there, heavy and unsettling. Most people who disrespect others aren't brave, they're opportunistic. They throw jabs only where they think they'll go unpunished. But when you respond with calm precision, when you make them repeat their own words in front of everyone, the performance collapses. Their smirk fades. Their confidence trembles. Because for the first time, they're not in control of the room you are. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." This moment is your proving ground. You don't seek revenge. You don't seek validation. You seek doubt, planting it in the mind of the one who tested you. That doubt is the quietest form of power. It doesn't roar, it lingers. It makes them hesitate next time. It makes everyone watching reconsider how they approach you. Think of the energy in that silence. the way it bends the room. You didn't threaten, you didn't explain, you didn't defend, yet everyone understands. Something just shifted. That's what Stoicism looks like when it's alive. It's control in real time. It's composure weaponized through awareness. And here's the deeper truth. Most people can handle one confrontation, one flash of strength. What they can't handle is consistency. You see, the first time you check disrespect, they retreat. But if you go soft again, if you let comfort return, they'll test you once more. Not because they hate you, but because people always push where resistance fades. So your next step isn't just to respond once, it's to sustain your standard. Power isn't in the single moment of control. It's in your ability to hold that line long after the moment has passed. Because when people realize your calm is not a performance, but a way of being, they stop trying to provoke it. And that's when true respect begins, not in the confrontation itself, but in the quiet after, when everyone understands you meant every word without ever raising your voice. At this stage, something inside you shifts. After the silence, after the stillness, comes the moment where you decide what happens next. This is where most people break. They want to go back to normal, to smooth things over, to pretend the sting never happened. But not you. Not this time. Because when someone disrespects you and you meet it with calm, the next move isn't reconciliation, it's redefinition. You don't return to normal, you redraw the map. Now imagine this. The air still carries the weight of what was said. The laughter around you fades, but its echo lingers. Everyone's watching, not with judgment, but curiosity. They want to see what you'll do now. So you stand a little straighter, you speak a little slower, you withdraw, not in weakness, but with purpose. Your warmth becomes measured, your tone sharper, your time rarer. You stop giving them the same access they once had. You don't announce the change, you let them feel it. Because the most powerful boundaries are invisible but undeniable. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That's exactly what you're doing here. You're not explaining your worth, you're embodying it. You've shown the room what strength looks like when it doesn't need to shout. You've proven that respect isn't claimed through dominance, but through principle. And principle requires distance. So you step back, quietly, intentionally. Because sometimes the loudest statement you can make is retreat. This is what separates the respected from the ignored. Not anger, not ego, but discipline. The discipline to say, "I am not available for that." The discipline to let your silence do the talking. The discipline to choose self-respect over comfort. You've shifted the energy now. The current flows differently. People start to measure their words. Their jokes lose their edge. Your name begins to carry weight. Not fear, but calculation. They speak it with caution because they've learned the truth. The person who cannot be disrespected isn't the loudest. It's the one who knows exactly what to do the moment it happens. Seneca once said, "He who forgives easily invites offense." Stoic wisdom isn't about holding grudges. It's about teaching balance. Forgiveness can still come, but not without consequence. You've shown the world how you move when crossed. No outburst, no chaos, just removal. You don't need to explain why you're distant. They already know. They feel it in your absence, in your restraint, in the new gravity of your presence. Disrespect is never random. It's a signal, a small test to measure how far someone can push before you push back. The first insult disguised as humor, the subtle dismissal, the fake compliment hiding contempt, all of them are probes. And the first time you ignore it, you teach everyone in the room what your silence is worth. Because the world learns from what you allow. And once they see you as easy to cross, regaining control costs twice the effort. So after the moment passes, after the silence, after the shift, you don't soften, you solidify. You rebuild the dynamic on new terms, ones they didn't choose, but now must live by. Because the next test is coming. Not loud, not bold, but disguised as something harmless, a smile, a joke, an oversight. They'll be watching you for weakness, and that's when your next move begins. Because self-respect isn't proven in confrontation, it's proven in what follows after. At this stage, the temperature drops. The air is still, but the message is clear. Someone has tested you again, not with open disrespect this time, but with something smaller, subtler, a smirk, a tone, a question they know crosses the edge of comfort. They're not testing your strength, they're testing your consistency. And this is where the Stoic response evolves from calm restraint to calculated consequence. Machiavelli's philosophy was never about fairness, it was about effectiveness. He understood something that unsettles modern minds. If the punishment equals the offense, it's forgotten. But when it's greater, it becomes remembered. You're not seeking revenge, you're setting precedent. The goal is not to wound, it's to warn. You're saying, you don't get to play with me twice. When they cross the line again, you don't flare up, you don't explain, you go colder, not louder, because coldness carries weight. Noise invites argument, but silence, when deliberate, creates fear. If the offense was public, the correction must be too, but not through insult, through precision. You don't humiliate, you isolate. You respond like a surgeon, not a soldier. So when they make their little comment, you pause. You turn your gaze toward them, steady, unblinking. Then you shift to someone else in the group and continue speaking, leaving their words to die in the silence. They ask you a question, you give a one-word answer, calm and clipped, then move on. They try to reclaim your warmth. To soften the air again, you give them the social equivalent of a locked door. Polite, distant, final. That's not cruelty, that's closure. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's exactly what this is. You're not punishing with anger, you're disciplining with distance. You're showing them something far more powerful than rage, indifference. The moment they lose your attention, they lose access. And that's what cuts deepest. Because what hurts people most is not being insulted, it's being ignored by someone who once acknowledged them. But here's where most fail. They crave harmony. They want to be liked again, to smooth things over, to appear the bigger person. Yet, Stoicism teaches the opposite. Being the bigger person doesn't mean letting others shrink your dignity. It means valuing peace over popularity, principle over perception. Machiavelli would have laughed at the idea that forgiveness earns admiration. Respect is not given through kindness, it's earned through consequence, delivered in silence, not fury. And here's the truth most overlook. People are always watching. They saw the disrespect, they saw your composure, and now they're watching your next move. They want to see if you'll stay consistent or crumble back into comfort. This is your moment of definition, because as Machiavelli said, men judge by the eye more than by the hand. Your image after conflict becomes either your armor or your exposure. You want your silence to speak clearly. He doesn't tolerate that. She won't engage with disrespect. You only get one chance with them. When those sentences become your reputation, everything shifts. The jokes fade. The tone changes. People speak your name with care. You've stopped asking for respect. Now, It happens naturally. You didn't chase this power. You built it, one quiet decision at a time, one surgical response after another. Until you became someone who doesn't demand boundaries, they radiate from you. But here's the next truth. Some people won't be stopped by shame. They don't care about social consequence. They feed on reaction. They thrive on chaos. And when these types meet someone like you, they face only two options: escalate or retreat. And if they choose to escalate, that's when the third level begins, the moment where composure turns into strategy and silence becomes a weapon. At this stage, the balance of power shifts. You've stayed calm, you've held your silence, and now comes the moment where your restraint becomes your weapon. When disrespect lingers in the air, you don't meet it with rage. You turn it inside out. You use their own behavior as the blade. You leverage their disrespect against them, because retaliation, when done right, isn't reaction, it's revelation. Now imagine this scene. Someone crosses the line again, a sly joke, a tone that hides venom. Everyone's watching, waiting for your response, but you don't raise your voice. You don't even flinch. Instead, you hold their gaze and, with quiet precision, turn their words back to them. That's an interesting joke. Do you use that one at work, too? The laughter fades. If you talk to your friends like that, I'd hate to hear how you talk to strangers. The air grows heavier, or perhaps simply, I'm surprised you said that out loud. That's all it takes. You're not arguing, you're exposing. You're showing them their reflection in front of everyone, and suddenly they're not in control anymore. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's what you're doing here. You're not lowering yourself to their level. You're elevating the standard. You're making them wear their own disrespect like a scar they gave themselves. And that's when their confidence begins to shrink. Not because you shouted, but because you made them small without moving an inch. This is the art of stoic retaliation, the Machiavellian kind. It's never loud, it's never rushed, it's deliberate, measured, executed with such calm precision that by the time they realize what just happened, the room has already turned. The energy shifts. You didn't fight for dominance, you revealed imbalance. You let their disrespect hang in the air, and then you collapsed it into something they now own. That's how power is built in silence. You don't just ignore disrespect, you transform it into exposure. Every attempt to provoke you becomes a mirror they can't escape. Seneca once said, "He who seeks wisdom must first endure being misunderstood." You will be misunderstood when you choose restraint over noise. People might think you're cold, but in truth, you're crafting your image, one calm response at a time. Because silence, when used intentionally, doesn't make you passive, it makes you dangerous. You're no longer the easy target. You've become the one people hesitate to test. Here's the deeper truth. Disrespect doesn't survive in courage, it survives in safety. They insult you because they think you won't act. They mock you because they think you won't risk discomfort. They push because they assume you've never pushed back. That's what fuels their arrogance, the illusion of your inaction. But once you respond with controlled precision, once you make them uncertain of your next move, everything changes. Machiavelli understood this. Power isn't in constant retaliation, it's in creating the possibility that you could, that at any moment you might choose to respond in a way they didn't expect and can't contain. That's when your presence starts to carry weight. You become unpredictable, unreadable, untouchable. You don't need to threaten anyone, you just need to be someone they can't quite figure out. From here, your job isn't to win people's approval, it's to make them uncertain, not afraid, but cautious. Did I go too far? Why is he so quiet? What's she thinking? That uncertainty is your shield, because the one they can't read is the one they avoid crossing. Machiavelli warned, "A ruler who is easy to understand becomes easy to manipulate." The same truth applies to you. When you are silent, measured, and unpredictable, you become the anomaly in every room, and people instinctively defer to what they don't fully understand. That's how the mind works. It protects itself from danger, even social danger. So, you lean into that mystery. You don't talk as much. You observe longer. You speak rarely, but when you do, your words land like stones in water, rippling long after the sound is gone. You don't seek to be liked. You aim to be felt, because real respect doesn't come from being admired, it comes from being experienced. When your presence changes the atmosphere, when people adjust their tone before speaking to you, that's not intimidation, that's energy. Controlled, sharpened, unshakable. And that's how you become the quiet warning in every room, the presence that doesn't demand respect, but makes disrespect impossible. At this stage, the mind evolves. You stop reacting to disrespect as if it's personal. You start treating it as information. That's where separation begins, between you and the average person. They hear an insult and feel wounded. You hear it and think, "Ah, there's the weakness." They mock you, but you don't flinch because you can see what lies beneath it. Fear, envy, insecurity, a desperate attempt to claim control in a place they feel none. Once you understand that, everything changes. Disrespect no longer pierces you, it reveals them. Seneca once said, "No man is offended by another unless he first permits himself to be." So you stop permitting it. You watch instead. You take notes. You remember the moment, not out of anger, but calculation. Every act of disrespect becomes data, a map of weakness. Then you decide what to do with it. Do they still get access? Do they deserve correction or quiet isolation? Do you use them as an example or let them fade into irrelevance? This isn't emotional chess anymore. It's positioning, every move deliberate, every response intentional. Marcus Aurelius taught that power is not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. So you don't explode, you orchestrate. You understand what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that the best position is one where others fear violating your boundary, even when you're not there. That's real power, not when they praise you to your face, but when your absence commands restraint. The room moves differently around you. Conversations shift tone. People weigh their words before speaking your name. That's not arrogance. That's calibration, because the ones who never get disrespected aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who've made disrespect too expensive, not through rage, not through revenge, but through disciplined silence, disproportionate consequence, and unapologetic self-enforcement. You stop playing the social game, the one built on charm and noise, and start playing the power game, the one built on standards and stillness. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be invincible, make sure you cannot be disturbed." That's your armor now. You no longer fight for approval. You no longer justify your boundaries. You let people feel the cost of crossing them. They hesitate before joking at your expense. They soften their tone. Their energy changes. Because they realize you're not trying to fit in, you're redefining the room itself. There comes a moment in every power dynamic when the air shifts. It's subtle, but everyone feels it. The silence, the boundary, the unspoken certainty. You've made it clear without a word, you're not the kind of person to cross. And from that moment on, it's not just that people stop disrespecting you. It's that they stop believing they can. This is where Machiavelli's insight cuts deepest. Power isn't about what you do. It's about what people assume you might do. You become someone whose limits are unknown, whose silence doesn't signal submission but preparation, whose calm isn't kindness but containment. The less they can read you, the more they respect you. And once you've enforced a boundary once, that's not the end, it's your test. Not just with the one who crossed you, but with everyone who witnessed it. They're all watching to see if your value holds under pressure. Do you break? Do you explain? Do you shrink back into comfort? Or do you hold frame, unshaken, unmoved, uninterested in validation? That's when they feel something rare. Certainty. In a world addicted to approval, certainty is magnetic. You no longer need to raise your voice or prove your worth. Your warmth becomes a choice, not a default. You smile when you mean it. You speak when it's necessary. You offer access only to those who've earned it. And through that, you become untouchable, not by force, but by value. Because energetic value is built by subtraction. You remove reactivity. You strip away neediness. You erase the urge to over-explain or justify your presence. You stop tolerating even 1% of disrespect disguised as humor. And suddenly, the world adjusts. The room slows when you walk in. No one interrupts you mid-sentence. They repeat your words later because they were few but heavy. You're no longer moving through social terrain. You've become the terrain itself. And here lies Machiavelli's most brutal truth. Men must be either respected or eliminated. In modern life, that means people either understand your value or they lose access to it. You don't seek revenge. You deliver consequence without drama. The ones who cross you once and learn, those are lessons. The ones who cross you twice, you let them vanish into their own irrelevance. Because in your silence, you exposed them, and in your distance, you reminded them they were never close. You were never dependent. They were simply being tolerated. Once you've made that shift, you stop chasing understanding. You stop reacting to noise. You stop needing to prove you're the bigger person. Because now you've realized something the Stoics and Machiavelli both knew: you never have to defend what you refuse to let be touched. They can't disrespect what they can't reach. They can't undermine what doesn't lean on their approval. They can't provoke what doesn't need to respond. This is the apex of control, not over others, but over yourself. The quiet dominance that makes your very presence the standard by which all others are measured. At this stage, the silence becomes your greatest weapon. It's the moment after every word has faded and stillness takes the throne. Mercy can be more terrifying than punishment, because mercy, when delivered without warmth, carries a message colder than anger ever could. You're no longer a threat to me. That's how you end the game. Not by shouting, not by proving, but by making it clear that their power over you has expired. Now imagine this scene. After you've enforced your boundaries and withdrawn your presence, the air changes, the silence stretches, and inevitably they come back. They return, not out of guilt, but curiosity. They want to know if the ice has melted. They apologize, make jokes, act as though nothing happened. They test the temperature of your stillness, searching for signs of softness. But this is your moment of mastery, the point where you no longer mirror their emotion, no longer bend to their comfort. You give them nothing, no reaction, no reassurance, no return. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy," and this is what that looks like. No bitterness, no resentment. You let them walk through the new world you've built, one where your eyes no longer search for theirs, where your energy no longer shifts to meet them halfway, where they've become nothing more than a ghost wandering through the kingdom they once thought they ruled. This isn't pettiness, it's the discipline of detachment. Power by absence. Because nothing unsettles a manipulator more than realizing they never held any real influence over you. They tried to pull you off balance, only to find you were anchored far deeper than they imagined. They wanted to provoke reaction but found stillness instead. And that stillness is what breaks them, not your words, but your refusal to descend to their level. When someone disrespects you and you no longer react, you force them into confrontation with themselves. They see the reflection of their own insecurity, their own weakness, their own smallness. That's the final cut, the realization that their disrespect didn't diminish you. It revealed them. It refined you. It made you sharper, more self-contained, more untouchable. This is the role Machiavelli would have you play. Not the vengeful ruler who punishes every insult, but the silent architect of consequence, the one who allows others to expose themselves while remaining calm, calculating, and just out of reach. You don't demand respect anymore because everyone already knows. You only let them make that mistake once. After that, your silence becomes the lesson. And soon, you'll start to hear your name in whispers, not out of gossip, but out of reverence. People will say, he doesn't say much, but when he does, everyone listens. She never loses her cool. Be careful with that one, they don't come back around. That's the quiet power you've built, one that requires no defense, no justification, no noise. Seneca said, "He who has great power should use it lightly." You've learned this truth. Restraint isn't weakness, it's control. People begin to adjust themselves around you. They watch their tone, they measure their words, they feel the weight of your calm. Not because you intimidate them, but because your silence demands awareness. You've mastered something rarer than dominance, selective presence. You show up when you choose, you speak when it matters, and when you leave, whether from a conversation, a relationship, or a room, you leave an absence that lingers. That's how real power feels. It's not in your volume, it's in your gravity. So let them talk, let them guess, let them wonder what you'll do next. They already know the answer. If they cross the line again, you won't explain, you won't argue, you won't chase. You'll simply disappear, and that disappearance, the quiet, clean kind, will echo longer than any argument ever could, because in the end, power isn't in what you say, it's in what you can withhold. When you reach that level of control, your silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's not withdrawal, it's command. It's the sound of someone who has nothing left to prove, because in the end, silence doesn't end the story, it defines it. Let them speak, let them guess, let them wonder what your next move will be, because deep down, they already know. When someone crosses your line, you don't explain, you don't argue, you don't chase. You rise in silence, and that silence speaks louder than any reaction ever could. True strength is calm, not noise. True power is restraint, not revenge. If this message reminded you of your own quiet strength, take a moment to subscribe and stay with us on this journey of mastery and inner peace. Comment below with the words, "Hold your power," and keep walking your path with calm confidence.